My dear friend, I see you there this Friday morning, coffee in hand, week behind you, but your mind is already racing ahead to the weekend tasks. I see the way you've convinced yourself that rest is a luxury you can't afford, that productivity is the measure of your worth, that stopping means falling behind. But I want you to understand something profound this Friday morning that will change how you view rest forever. Rest is not a reward you earn after you've done enough. It's a requirement God built into the very fabric of creation. And this weekend, I'm inviting you to rest like you actually trust that God is bigger than your to-do list. Let me tell you about Marcus, because his story reveals a truth about rest that most of us have forgotten in our culture of constant hustle. Marcus was the definition of a high achiever. CEO of a growing company, father of 3, husband, church leader, community volunteer. His calendar was color-coded chaos, his phone buzzed with constant urgency, and his motto was, "I'll sleep when I'm dead." Every Friday morning, while others looked forward to the weekend, Marcus saw Saturday and Sunday as opportunities to catch up on everything he couldn't finish during the week. His weekends were filled with work emails, business calls, side projects, and an endless list of tasks that seemed to multiply faster than he could complete them. "I don't understand why I feel so empty," Marcus told me one Friday morning, sitting in my office with dark circles under his eyes and a coffee cup that shook slightly in his hands. "I'm accomplishing more than I ever have. I'm being productive, I'm advancing my career, I'm providing for my family, but I feel dead inside. I feel disconnected from God, distant from my family, and exhausted in my soul." I asked Marcus a simple question that changed everything. When God created the universe in 6 days, what did he do on the 7th day? "He rested," Marcus answered automatically. "Was the work finished? Was there nothing left to create or manage in the universe?" Marcus paused, thinking. "No, there's always more work to be done." Exactly. God didn't rest because he was tired or because he had completed everything. God rested because rest is part of the divine design for how life is meant to function. Rest isn't the absence of work, it's the completion of work. Rest isn't laziness, it's trust. That Friday afternoon, Marcus made a decision that transformed his life. He decided to trust God with his weekend. For the first time in years, he turned off his phone on Saturday morning and didn't check email until Monday. He played with his kids without thinking about business strategies. He took a nap without setting an alarm. He sat on his porch and listened to birds without feeling guilty about unfinished projects. Monday morning, Marcus discovered something that shook his understanding of how success actually works. While he was resting, God was working. 3 new client opportunities had come through referrals he hadn't expected. A problem he'd been struggling with for weeks suddenly had a clear solution. His team had handled a crisis better than he could have managed himself. "I've been exhausting myself trying to control outcomes God wanted to handle while I rested," Marcus realized. "I've been working so hard that I missed the miracles God wanted to perform in my life." This revelation about rest isn't just practical wisdom. It's deeply spiritual truth that goes back to the very beginning of creation. In Genesis 2:2-3, we read, "By the 7th day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the 7th day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the 7th day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done." Notice what happened here. God didn't just rest, he blessed the rest. He made it holy. Not the work, not the productivity, not the accomplishment, the rest. God took the day of ceasing from labor and declared it sacred. This means that when you rest, you're not being lazy or unproductive, you're participating in something God Himself modeled and blessed. When you choose rest over endless striving, you're aligning yourself with the rhythm God established in creation itself. But our culture has convinced us that rest is the enemy of success, that taking time off means falling behind, that constant productivity is the path to fulfillment. We've been taught to feel guilty about rest, to apologize for taking breaks, to justify leisure time by calling it recharging for more productivity. This is not God's design for your life, my friend. This is not how the Creator intended you to live. Look how Jesus handled rest in his earthly ministry. In Mark 6:30-31, we see the disciples returning from their first ministry tour, excited to tell Jesus everything they had done and taught. But notice Jesus' response: "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." The disciples were doing ministry, the most important work in the world. They were helping people, healing the sick, sharing the gospel. This wasn't optional work or selfish ambition. This was God's work. But even God's work needs to be balanced with God's rest. Jesus wasn't impressed by their busyness. He wasn't proud of their exhaustion. He didn't congratulate them for burning themselves out in service. Instead, he prescribed rest. He commanded them to withdraw, to be still, to recover. This is Jesus speaking to you this Friday morning. Come away and rest, not as a reward for working hard enough, but as a necessary part of how God designed you to function. But why is rest so difficult for us? Why do we feel guilty when we're not being productive? Why does taking a nap feel like failure instead of wisdom? I believe it comes down to a trust issue. Deep down, many of us don't really trust God can handle things without our constant involvement. We're afraid that if we stop working, stop striving, stop controlling, everything will fall apart. We've bought into the lie that our worth is determined by our output, that our value is measured by our productivity, that God's love for us is conditional on our performance. But listen to what Jesus says in Matthew 11:28-30. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Jesus isn't impressed by your exhaustion. He's not moved by your busyness. He's not proud of your burnout. He's inviting you to rest, not just physical rest, but soul rest. Rest that comes from knowing that your worth isn't tied to your work, that your value isn't determined by your productivity, that God's love for you is based on who you are, not what you do. This Friday morning, I want to share with you 4 profound truths about rest that will transform how you approach this weekend. First truth: rest is an act of faith. When you choose to rest, you're making a faith declaration that God is bigger than your to-do list, more capable than your efforts, and more trustworthy than your control. Rest says, I believe God can handle what I cannot, work while I sleep, and accomplish what I could never achieve through striving alone. Every time you take a nap, instead of checking emails, you're declaring that the universe doesn't depend on your constant vigilance. Every time you play instead of work, you're proclaiming that God's grace is sufficient for your needs. Every time you rest without guilt, you're exercising faith in God's sovereignty over your circumstances. Second truth: rest restores what work depletes. Work depletes your energy, creativity, patience, and perspective. Rest restores them. Work uses up your emotional, physical, and spiritual resources. Rest replenishes them. This isn't weakness. This is intelligent design. You are not a machine designed for constant output. You are a human being created with rhythms of work and rest, productivity and recovery, giving and receiving. When you honor these rhythms, you actually become more effective, more creative, more productive during your work hours. The goal isn't to work as much as possible. The goal is to work as effectively as possible. And effectiveness requires rest. Third truth: God works while you rest. Here's the miracle Marcus discovered. God doesn't stop working when you stop working. In fact, some of God's best work in your life happens when you step back and give Him room to operate. While you sleep, God is working in the hearts of people you're trying to reach. While you rest, God is orchestrating circumstances you couldn't manipulate. While you play, God is preparing opportunities you couldn't create through striving. Psalm 127:2 says, "In vain you rise early and stay up late, toiling for food to eat, for He grants sleep to those He loves." God grants sleep to those He loves. Rest is a gift from God, not an obstacle to God's work in your life.